Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about six IDP breakouts that you must draft.
Hike!
All right, Joe. So who's the first IDP breakout that you're telling the folks at home that they must draft?
And my first player, Steve, it's a pretty popular guy. So I chose to go with linebacker Trenton Simpson of the Baltimore Ravens, and he's stepping into a big opportunity here. Obviously, Patrick Queen has moved on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. He now gets to step into that starting spot, playing opposite of Roquan Smith, and I'm really looking for that breakout opportunity. Last year, Patrick Queen, he was able to amass 92 tackles. Got an interception, forced fumble as well. And honestly, the Ravens are so active, bringing guys on the blitz and everything like that too. So Trenton Simpson should get a lot of opportunities to fill a lot of different stat categories for you.
Before the show, you and I were thinking about who we were going to talk about, and he was a guy on my radar when you sent over that you were going to talk about, and I was like, oh, drats, there goes one of my players. But I'm with you. I mean, he fills an opportunity with Patrick Queen now with the division rival Steelers.
Yeah, and I know when Trenton Simpson was drafted, you and I both were wondering if he was going to, step right in and kind of be the starter over Patrick Queen, because we knew before last season, the Ravens were kind of unhappy with Patrick Queen, so people weren't sure what happened. But then he goes out and absolutely killed it last year and was able to, he balled out enough, Steve, so he could cash out with his new team in the Pittsburgh Steelers. So he infected that, and now, sure enough, Trenton Simpson, we didn't get it last year, but we definitely will get it this year.
We should really have a sound effect when we say ball out and you cash out, it's just be like a ching.
Yeah, you need that little soundboard like the fantasy footballers,
Yeah, we do. That's got to be added. But I agree with you. Patrick Queen, guy you and I both thought was toast, and he had a breakout year. Was not expecting to end up getting paid by the Steelers. So I like that pick for you for Trenton Simpson. My first IDP breakout. We'll stick with the linebackers, Joe. We're going to go with linebacker Jack Campbell, a guy who you and I were both excited about when he went to Detroit, was drafted in the first round, thought he could go high. Didn't think he'd go in the first round, but he didn't really play that much last year. That was really the problem when it came to Jack Campbell. Played 607 snaps. Alex Anzalone, he was the lonely linebacker. 1,005 snaps. He was a guy really the only one you'd want with the Lions. Derek Barnes had 704 snaps. So there's talk right now that Jack Campbell is looking really good in coverage, which coming out of the draft, that was one of his calling cards. But, the defensive coordinator, Glenn from the Lions, is really excited about him. And not to mention, it looks like he's getting the green dot, which we know, Joe, when it comes to linebackers, if they got the green dot, that means they're the cap in the defense. They're making the calls. They're making the audibles. So it means that, guess what? He'll be on the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was the one thing I feel like holding back Campbell last year was just the opportunities. I thought he was going to get more opportunities as a rookie. Ultimately, had somewhat of a disappointing season, but I'm right there with you. He's got the green dot, and being that he does, I'm expecting him to be a lot better this season. And I think he's a good breakout candidate pick here.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. All right, Joe, so who is your second breakout IDP player?
Yeah, now you might call this one as somewhat of a homer, Steve, because I got this guy in the Dynasty League, but I'm going to go with safety Antonio Johnson, who I was able to draft last year. He was a third-round pick by the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Rayshon Jenkins is gone. There's a ton of opportunity in the safety room, and I'll tell you one thing, Andre Sisco, one thing that we've seen so far in the one of the preseason, he's definitely going to be the deep safety guy. And what I like about Antonio Johnson is as long as, the first preseason game could be an indication of what they're planning on doing with him. I mean, Antonio Johnson was lining up all over the field. He had 2 snaps at the edge position. He got 4 box snaps. They even had 16 snaps in the slot. And then he did play some deep snaps, but only 5. out of all those other ones compared to Andre Sisco, who played a total of 10 snap and 7 of them were at deep safety and 3 in the slot. So the opportunities that this guy, being that they're moving him, along the line of scrimmage, I'm expecting him to blitz quite a bit. He could get you some sacks. I think he's going to be close and around the ball to amass you a decent amount of points.
Are you concerned about the rotation possibly that could happen? They've had Andrew Wingard. He's been there for a long time. They brought in Darnell Savage, former high draft pick of the Packers. So do you think it's possible that he won't get a lot of snaps?
Well, I mean, I think that they're planning on having him be a lot of snaps just because they're moving him all over the place. So yeah, maybe if they want to bring in another safety, maybe they go ahead and put Antonio Johnson at the nickel position, which I'm still fine with. He's still, close to the ball. And yeah, I don't know if I'm concerned about that. I get that they have other safeties, but I don't know. I'm excited, and he's listed as the starter, and it's been that way all off
You
season
sure
thus
about
far.
that? And I when I looked at the Jaguars depth chart, he was seen as the backup.
Every time I've seen him, man, he was the starter.
Interesting. I don't know. There's no alpha safety there, so you could be wrong. I mean, you could be right in the fact. See, my subconscious says you're wrong, but I'm
Yeah.
telling you that you could be right. But I think that there's no alpha though, so he could be the guy. But I'm a little worried about the rotation. I think that could happen there.
Yeah, I get that, but I'm not as concerned about that. But I did see they must have updated the chart. He was the starter, but I see they do have him behind Andre Sisco, but I'm not concerned about it.
You
I
don't
think they're
even
gonna
care about the depth charts. You think it's a bunch of malarkey.
Yeah, I right now I do. Until I see that official one, that's the one I go by. And I just like the way that they were able to move Antonio Johnson all around, and it seems like they're excited to utilize this guy in many ways.
So my second IDP breakout is going to be edge rusher Nolan Smith. Now, Nolan Smith was a former first-round pick out of the University of Georgia, smaller stature, and the thought was that he could make an impact right away. That Philadelphia Eagles pass rush was only going to get better after the year that they had the year prior. Well, what do you know? They didn't do so well last year. And Nolan Smith only played a total of 187 snaps, so he really didn't get a lot of playing time. Now we've seen Hassan Reddick get traded. We're not even going to be talking about him with the melodrama that's going on with the Jets.
No hero there.
No, but he's gone. They brought in Bryce Huff, and then Brandon Graham. This is his last year, but he's not going to get a lot of snaps. So Nolan Smith, even in his short amount of time, had an 8.8% pressure rate. So we're already starting to see him make flashes in the preseason. I believe he's already had 2 sacks in the first 2 games. So I think he's a very explosive player. They actually said that Nolan Smith, if they were to compare him to any player, the comp was Hassan Reddick, now no longer there. So I think that Nolan Smith could really, when we think of a breakout, it's hard to really come on, what's a sleeper, what's a breakout? This is a guy who was a nobody, and he's jumping on the scene. And I think that's going to be Nolan Smith.
Yeah, so far, I mean, he's looked pretty good in preseason. I believe he picked up another sack in tonight's game against the Patriots as well. So there's no reason that these edge rushers shouldn't be good in Philly. Their defensive line, they have so many big dominant players on there that the interior of this line should be getting the pushes and honestly should be allowing these guys to come free, and they can't be doubled on the outside or anything. So I would make a ton of sense if Nolan Smith were to break out. I know I grabbed him in a dynasty league. He was pretty disappointed in his rookie year, but we know that it can take these defensive linemen and edge rushers some time to adapt and get better over time.
You know who else picked up a sack tonight?
Talking about Keion White.
My boy Keion White
Yeah.
got a sack as well, but he was a sleeper, so I can't say he's a breakout. So, Joe, who is your final IDP breakout for the folks at home?
Yeah, I'm going to stay at the edge rusher position here, and last player is, ironically enough, another 3rd-round pick out of Louisville, and that's edge rusher Yaya Diaby of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Shaq Barrett is no longer. He did go to the Miami Dolphins, but then ultimately chose to retire. So Yaya Diaby is going to step in, and I think honestly he could make the argument he's right now their best pass rusher on the Buccaneers. He had 7.5 sacks as a rookie, played in all 17 games, also had 38 tackles, forced fumble, fumble recovery. But for this to really be a breakout, I'm looking for him to get, double-digit sacks this year. And yes, if he's able to do that, then you can really consider it breakout. I'll be disappointed if he doesn't reach that. And I think the emergence of, Kalijah Cansey along the interior, who could argue could be another breakout player if he takes that next step this year. He had a pretty impressive rookie season. Should help him get that rush, but Yaya Diaby will need some help. He's going to need help from Joe Tryon-Shoyinka and the guy I really like, rookie Chris Braswell out of Alabama as well.
Mamma mia, over 10 sacks? You really think that he's going to step it up?
From what I've seen, man, like last year, he was really impressive. I mean, most people didn't really know who he was, but he really burst onto the team. He was able to get 7.5 as a rookie. That's impressive in itself. So I
Isn't
think
he banged up though?
Look, I know you're going to bring up the ankle injury. They're saying
Here
he's
we
fine.
go. Here
He's
we go.
he hasn't, he was at practice, isn't practicing in full yet, but Tampa Bay Buccaneers are believe that he'll be ready for week 1.
Well, I mean, Joe Tryon has been a huge disappointment
Tell
out of
me about it.
University of Washington. I mean, people thought that he could be something, and he really hasn't been. And then you got Braswell, who you like a lot. I know you do, but
Yeah.
I agree that Diaby is definitely their best edge rusher on that team, with no question.
Yeah, be interesting. Would have been interesting if they would have brought in a guy like Matt Judon. Maybe they could get a guy like Hassan Reddick to pair up with them if the Jets, in fact, do go ahead and trade him.
Yeah, it's wild.
not to bring that situation back up again.
Well, Joe, what are you doing? I think here's the thing, though. I think that Diaby could have benefited from Shaq Barrett, though. His presence on that team, I think, could have helped him.
It could have helped him, but let's face it. I mean, Shaq Barrett wasn't the same player last year that he was in.
No, that's true.
Years past. So I don't know how much help he was given other than that name factor and people to key on him. But to me, Diaby really flashed, and that's why I think he can take the next step in the second year here.
So my final IDP breakout for the 2024 season is going to be edge rusher Lucas Van Ness. Guy who was a former first-round pick, wasn't even a starter at Iowa, so that raised eyebrows. But the guy was a combine warrior. Thought he was an athletic freak, could really do a lot at the next level. Well, Joe, this is a similar theme what happened with Nolan Smith. Lucas Van Ness only played 366 snaps last year. Kingsley and Agraby had 453 snaps, Preston Smith at 730, and then Rashawn Gary at 586. I think that's going to change. Van Ness has shown some flashes. People thought that he may need some time to develop. I think that time has come. Even last year, he had a 9.8 pressure rate, and I think this Packers defense is going to need some juice. I think Rashawn Gary, to be honest, is a little overrated. Preston Smith is getting a little up there, and then Agraby's, just a guy. He's a jag. So to me, at the end of the day, you got Van Ness is going to be the guy who really, just causes that defense to have a splash.
Yeah, I hope you're right. I mean, you just picked a couple of guys that are on one of my dynasty teams, and I hope you're right, man, because I drafted them last year and was pretty disappointed with them. I think even more so in Van Ness than Nolan Smith, potentially, just because I was expecting better things out of Van Ness, being that the Packers outside of Rashawn Gary didn't really have anything. So I thought he might be able to come out and produce right away, but he didn't really. You could just tell watching the games, he didn't have the full pass rush moves and just able to really make an impact on the games.
Well, you got to be careful with those athletic freaks. I mean, I was way off on Tyree Wilson. I thought he had bust written all over him, and he has shown to be the case. So Van Ness is kind of one of those. I had more confidence in him than I did Tyree Wilson. This will be interesting, though. Can he show out in year 2? If not, now he goes to year 3. Now the Packers pick up the 5th-year option after that year. Things start to get a little dicey.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because, I mean, I think everyone was hoping for Tyree Wilson to kind of be like the Trayvon Walker type, just really athletic. But even we've seen it taken Trayvon Walker time. Like he showed out and he was better last year. We'll see if he can keep taking that next step. I think having a guy like Josh Allen should really help him, at least in Jacksonville. So I think there's still hope for Van Ness. I mean, he was just a rookie last year.
So that does it for this episode where we talked about some IDP breakouts, 6 of them that you got to keep your eye on. And, if you're interested in breakouts, you may be interested in IDP sleepers. Talked about some veterans and some younger players. You're going to want to check that out. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time.